I always thought that if something like this ever happened to me, I'd know exactly what to do. I'd act fast. I'd be cold, surgical. I'd report it, block him, move on, maybe even press charges. But when I saw the photos, my photos, posted online without my consent, with a fake name and location tag, and with comments flooding in, I froze. I physically froze. It was as if my skin had been peeled off in public, and there I was, raw and humiliated, without even knowing who had the knife. The first time I suspected something was wrong was on a Tuesday. I remember that because I always bring lunch to work on Tuesdays, my little act of responsibility, if you will, and that particular Tuesday, I left my Tupperware in the fridge and never touched it. My phone had started buzzing around 11 a.m., right after the morning meeting. First it was texts from unknown numbers, then blocked calls, then a message from a friend I hadn't talked to in months. "Hey, not sure if this is you, but I thought you should see this." She attached a screenshot. I didn't even click the link at first, just stared at the image. It was me, lying on my bed, wearing nothing but a thin bedsheet and a tired smile. One of the photos I had taken, for him. I hadn't seen that photo in years. Not since Greg and I broke up. Greg, my ex-boyfriend. The man who told me I was too emotionally distant, while he chipped away at my confidence for 2 years. The same man who once cried in front of my parents to convince them he was the one. The man who begged me to just send a few because he missed me during his business trips. It's funny. When we broke up, I told myself I was lucky, that I got out before things turned darker, that I dodged a bullet. I never thought he'd be the kind to do something like this. Not Greg. He was always too concerned about his image. But there they were, 5 photos. Intimate. Real. Mine. Uploaded to a site I'd never heard of before but quickly realized was one of those forums. The kind where anonymous usernames pass around people's stolen privacy like trading cards. I locked my office door and sat in silence. My ears were ringing. My hands were ice. My chest? It felt like someone had scooped it out and left a hollow pit in its place. It took me 30 minutes just to call my sister. "Claire," she answered, breathless. "What's wrong?" I couldn't speak right away. I just exhaled. Then he posted them. There was a pause, then her voice shifted from concern to fury in half a breath. "Greg? Are you kidding me?" "I don't have proof," I said quietly. "But they're photos I only ever sent him." That's when the grief settled in. Not rage, that came later. At first, it was pure shame. The kind that wraps around your throat and tells you you're the one who should have known better. I took the rest of the day off. Told HR I wasn't feeling well, which wasn't a lie, and went straight home. I sat on my couch with my laptop open and scrolled through every detail of the site. The comments. The file names. The timing. I took screenshots of everything. Saved the URLs. Every image. The username that posted them was something generic, Upstate Guy 83. No identifying info. But the captions? They were personal. Almost too personal. She was always a little shy, but she liked to be watched. Took these back when we were together. Still miss her sometimes. She doesn't know she's here. I felt sick. And that's when something shifted. It wasn't just violation. It was possession. A man trying to claim a piece of me like a trophy, parading it around like he still had some right to me. And the more I read, the more I realized it wasn't enough for him to hurt me privately. He wanted an audience. That's when the shame cracked and the fury poured in. Over the next 2 days, I filed everything. I contacted the website's abuse reporting system. I filed a complaint with the Cyber Civil Rights Initiative. I even spoke to a lawyer friend of mine who specialized in privacy law. Her response? "You're doing everything right. But this can take months. Sometimes longer. Sites like that don't always cooperate." I wanted faster. I wanted brutal. But I was also smart enough to know that recklessness could backfire. So I did what I do best. I watched. I gathered. I researched. Greg worked at a financial services firm in Midtown. Last I'd heard, he'd been promoted to some senior management role, something with oversight, client-facing responsibilities, and definitely a public profile. So I went to LinkedIn. His profile was polished. Too polished. Smiling headshot. Dozens of endorsements. Several articles he'd posted about integrity in leadership and the importance of trust in client relations. I wanted to scream, but instead, I started creating a timeline. When we were together, when I sent the photos, when we broke up, when the images appeared online. I also went back into our old texts, which I hadn't deleted, even though I told myself I should have years ago. There they were, messages where he'd asked for the photos. Promised they were just for him. Told me I could trust him. Even thanked me for making his trip easier. I had the digital receipts, and I was going to use them. But I also knew I couldn't do it publicly. Not yet. I didn't want my name tied to the images forever. I didn't want a messy legal battle where my body was debated in courtrooms. So I made a call. Not to him. Not to his family. To his company. I asked to speak to the Director of Human Resources. Is this regarding an employment matter? The assistant asked. Yes, I said. It's about a serious ethical concern. The director, a woman named Linda, answered after 5 minutes on hold. I kept my voice calm. Professional. I need to report something regarding one of your employees, Gregory Marsden. I didn't say my ex. I didn't cry. I laid it out like a report. I believe he uploaded non-consensual intimate images of me to a public website. I have proof that he was the only recipient of the photos, and I have screenshots showing captions that imply possession and authorship. He used a pseudonym, but the metadata and timeline point directly to him. Linda didn't interrupt. She just said, "We take this extremely seriously. Would you be willing to send us your documentation?" I already had it in a folder. Titled, for HR, Private Image Violation, Confidential. I sent it within the hour. She replied within the day. We are launching an internal investigation immediately. You are not required to participate further, but if you are willing, we may reach out for a written statement. I agreed. Quietly. Firmly. 3 days passed. On the 4th, I got a call from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Greg. He didn't yell. He didn't apologize. He pleaded. Claire, I don't know what you think you saw, but please can we talk? I'm going to lose everything. You don't have to do this. I didn't call him back. Later that evening, I got an email from Linda. Gregory Marsden is no longer employed with our company. We appreciate your courage in coming forward. If there's anything else we can do, please let us know. I stared at the message for a full minute. Then I sat back. Breathed. It wasn't justice in the movies. There was no courtroom. No dramatic confrontation. Just a quiet click. A few files. A single phone call. But it was enough. For now. I thought that would be the end of it. Honestly, I did. He lost his job. The photos were taken down. The site suspended his account. I felt like I had done what I needed to do quietly, precisely, without turning it into a war. But predators don't go quietly when they lose power. They panic. They grab at whatever they can still control. They look for ways to twist the story and make themselves the victim. 2 weeks after he was fired, my inbox started to shift. First, it was subtle. A few nasty emails from accounts I didn't recognize. Anonymous, of course. Stuff like, liar. You ruined an innocent man's life. Stop pretending you're a victim. You knew what you were doing when you took those pictures. Then it got worse. Screenshots of my LinkedIn profile were sent to my work email, with threats to share the truth about me with my clients. One message even included a blurred photo of the building I lived in. I started keeping my curtains closed. I started looking over my shoulder when I left the office. I didn't cry, not this time. But I felt something shift inside me again, something cold and sharp, the realization that silence might not be enough anymore. I made another appointment with my lawyer friend. Her name's Nina. We'd gone to college together and drifted apart, but reconnected after the incident. She looked over the screenshots and shook her head. It's him. Or someone working for him. But I blocked him. I reported everything. Nina folded her hands and looked at me with something close to pity, but not quite. More like understanding. Claire, you played it smart. You stayed calm. You did everything by the book. But you hurt him in the only place he had left, his ego. And now he's flailing. So what do I do? Her answer came fast. You document everything. Again. You go to the police and file a report, not for the old crime, for the harassment. Then we talk restraining order. I hated it. Every step of this felt like peeling off another layer of skin. I just wanted to go back to being invisible. But he wasn't going to let me. So I filed the report. The officer at the precinct was polite, but skeptical. You never saw him physically near your home? No, I said. And he hasn't contacted you directly from his own number? No, but I have strong reason to believe. He held up a hand gently. I get it. I do. But it's going to be hard to prove unless we get something more concrete. So that's what I started hunting for, concrete. I pulled every IP address that had accessed my website contact form. I traced which of them linked to fake emails used to send threats. I had help. Nina referred me to a cybersecurity guy she trusted, and within a week, we had a list of suspicious overlaps. It wasn't conclusive, but it was enough to make my case stronger. Then one day, it stopped. The emails. The messages. Everything. A dead silence fell over my digital world, and for a moment, I let myself believe it was over. Maybe someone had warned him. Maybe the police visit had been enough. But deep down, I knew better. Abusers don't disappear. They morph. That same week, my company held its annual networking gala. It was a formal event, high-end hotel, name tags, and champagne. I hadn't planned on going. I was still wary of crowds, but my boss insisted. You're one of our best, she said. You belong there. So I went. I wore a navy dress that made me feel more armored than glamorous, pulled my hair back, and walked into that ballroom like I hadn't spent the last 2 months cleaning up someone else's digital mess. And that's when I saw him. Not Greg. His friend, Matt. One of those guys who always hovered around during our relationship, the one who made the sleazy jokes, who called me Ice Queen when Greg wasn't looking. I hadn't seen him in years. But there he was, standing at the bar in a tux, chatting up a woman half his age. I didn't approach him, but I watched. Waited. At some point, he noticed me and froze. His eyes widened, just a little. Then he smiled. Not friendly. Not surprised. Just calculated. That's when I knew. Matt was helping Greg. He was the backup, the muscle, the one who could move in places Greg couldn't now that he had something to lose. I didn't need to prove it yet. I just needed to stay calm. I left the gala early and went home. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I found a message in my inbox, no text, just an attachment. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. It was a photo. Me from the gala. Taken from a distance, but clearly through a zoom lens. No watermark. Just a timestamp. And underneath it, a single line. You can play smart all you want, but we still see you. That was it. No more hoping they'd stop. No more waiting for someone else to act. I called Nina. We're filing today, I said. Police? No. Court. Restraining order. Civil suit. Whatever it takes. We began the process that afternoon. She had everything ready, the screenshots, the messages, the timeline. I gave a statement. We filed for a protective order. I also sent a formal cease and desist letter to Greg's last known address and one to Matt through his employer. And I posted my own version of the truth. Not the photos. Not the accusations. Just a blog post. I titled it, What It's Like When They Think They Still Own You. It wasn't a name and shame. It was a story. My story. About betrayal, violation, and the quiet horror of knowing someone out there believes you belong to them, even after you walk away. It went viral in a day. Not millions of views viral, but enough. Thousands of shares. Dozens of messages. Women and men writing to tell me their stories. Strangers offering support. Colleagues admitting they had no idea, but they stood with me. I felt strong again. Until I got the call. It was my boss. Claire, she said, gently. We've received some concerning inquiries about you. What kind? Anonymous tips. Links. Accusations that you're unstable, vindictive. That you're trying to ruin someone's life for personal gain. I closed my eyes. Greg was playing dirty now. I can explain everything, I said. You don't need to, she interrupted. We've seen your blog. We know the truth. But I wanted you to know, this won't be the end of it. If he's escalating this far, he won't stop until something scares him. I thought I already did. You hurt his image, she said. But now he wants to hurt yours. That night, I received a legal notice. Greg was threatening to sue me for defamation. It was ridiculous. He had no case. But that wasn't the point. The point was intimidation. So I called Nina again. We're not waiting anymore, I told her. I want to go on record. I want to be public. You sure? She asked. That's a big step. I'm done hiding. And I was. When you go public with something like this, there's no rewind button. You can't take it back once it's out there. You either stand in the storm or let it swallow you. I chose to stand. I published a full account under my real name. No pseudonyms. No vague metaphors. Just the truth. I didn't name Greg, not directly, but the timeline was clear enough. Anyone who cared to piece it together could do the math. I wrote, I trusted someone who used my body as a weapon after I left. He uploaded private photos. He tried to make me feel ashamed. When I reported it, he lost his job. Now he's trying to make me the villain. But I'm not hiding anymore. The post spread quickly. Within 48 hours, a local journalist reached out. Then a podcast. Then a women's advocacy group that offered me a speaking slot on a panel about digital abuse. And for a few days, it felt like I had the upper hand again. Until I realized I'd underestimated how far Greg was willing to go. It started with fake profiles. Someone created an Instagram account using old pictures of me, not the leaked ones, just personal ones pulled from old public posts, and filled the bio with phrases like manipulative liar and don't believe her. The account followed people I knew. My coworkers. My boss. My landlord. Then came the blog. A full website, clearly made to look like an exposé. It had sections, Claire's lies, the real victim, and even screenshots of our texts, taken out of context, twisted into something sinister. It was anonymous, of course, but I knew who was behind it. What scared me wasn't the content. It was how believable it all looked if you didn't know me. If you saw only his version, the curated monster he painted me as manipulative, vengeful, unstable, you might just believe it. He didn't need to prove anything in court. He just needed to cast enough doubt. I brought it to Nina. This is a smear campaign, she said. He's trying to poison your reputation because he can't touch your career directly. Can we stop him? She paused. Yes, but not with subtlety anymore. What do you mean? I mean going legal. I mean cease and desists, defamation suit, digital forensics, subpoenaing IP logs. We go loud. I hesitated. If I sue, I become a bigger target. You already are one, she said. You just haven't hit back. So we started building the case. We hired a cybersecurity firm to start tracing IPs from the fake website and social accounts. We documented every incident, every message, every attempt to discredit me. And then we got a hit. One of the IPs used to update the smear blog had been traced back to a commercial internet service assigned to Greg's new girlfriend's apartment building. Nina lit up. That's our connection. If we can tie it to him, even through her, it shows intent. We drafted a formal notice, remove all defamatory content immediately or face legal action. It went out certified mail, email, and via the hosting company. The blog went offline 2 days later. Victory? Not yet. Because Greg escalated again. He showed up in person. It was 8:12 p.m. I remember because I was halfway through washing dishes, listening to some moody acoustic playlist when the buzzer rang. I rarely got unexpected visitors. I live alone. My building's secure. So when the intercom crackled, I assumed it was a delivery. Claire, the voice said. It's me. I froze. My fingers still dripping soap. Greg. I didn't answer. I just want to talk, he said. 5 minutes. I backed away from the intercom like it might catch fire. My heart hammered in my throat. My fight or flight reflex kicked in hard. I called the building manager immediately. Don't let him in. That man is not allowed here. He said Greg had waited by the door, claiming we had a meeting. He'd smiled, worn a nice coat, said all the right things. They asked him to leave. He did, but slowly, like he wanted me to know he'd been there. I filed another report, updated the police. added the incident to my request for a permanent restraining order. But it rattled me. Bad. Because now it wasn't just about my career. Or my name. It was about my safety. Nina insisted I stay with someone for a few days. I moved in with my sister temporarily. The moment I walked through her door, she looked at me like I was a stranger. "You've lost weight," she said quietly. I shrugged. "I've lost sleep." We sat on the couch, and for the first time, I let myself collapse a little. My shoulders dropped. My hands trembled. I was tired. So tired. "He's never going to stop, is he?" My sister put her arm around me. "No. Not until you show him what real consequences look like." I knew what she meant. It was time to burn it all down. We filed the civil suit the next week. Claire Vaughn versus Gregory Marsden, for defamation, invasion of privacy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. It hit him harder than I expected. Suddenly, Greg's lawyer was calling Nina, begging to resolve this quietly. He claimed Greg was being harassed too, that he had lost work, that he just wanted to move on. But the damage was done to me. And this time, I wasn't letting him slither out of it. The day we served the court papers, I got another email, no words, just the subject line. "You're really doing this, huh?" I didn't reply. Let him squirm. My story, my real story, was already gaining traction. The blog posts led to podcast interviews, then speaking events. Women's shelters started reaching out. Cyber harassment panels. I even got invited to speak at a university media law seminar. And through all of it, I told the same truth. Your silence is not protection. Their shame is not yours to carry. But the most surprising message came from someone unexpected. Greg's ex before me. A woman named Erin. She'd read my story. Recognized his pattern. "He did the same to me," she wrote. "But I didn't have the strength to fight back. Thank you for doing what I couldn't." We spoke for an hour. She told me about how he'd pressured her, isolated her from friends, hinted at threats when she tried to leave. How he once filmed her without her consent. I asked if she'd testify if it came to that. Her answer, "Gladly." That's when I really knew this wasn't just about me. It was bigger. A system. A pattern. And I wasn't afraid anymore. I moved back into my apartment 2 weeks later. I changed the locks. Installed a camera. I even bought myself a small bat, just in case. But I walked in proud. He tried to ruin me. Instead, he made me visible and more dangerous than ever. By the time we got a court date, the buzz had already started dying down. Online drama is like a wave. It crashes hard, but it recedes just as fast. People move on. But for me, the tide hadn't gone out. It was still flooding everything, my inbox, my mind, my sleep. But I'd made it this far. I was committed now. Not just for myself, but for every woman who had ever sat frozen in front of a computer screen, realizing her privacy was gone. And Greg? He stayed quiet. No more emails. No more anonymous threats. Just legal silence. The kind that feels like someone winding back a slingshot. Then, 5 days before our first appearance, Nina called. "You're going to want to sit down," she said. She sent over a PDF. It was a copy of Greg's counterclaim. He was suing me for defamation, intentional interference with business relations, and emotional distress. He claimed I had knowingly fabricated a public narrative that caused irreversible damage to his career and personal reputation. It was laughable. Except it wasn't. Because now we weren't just playing offense. We were fighting on 2 fronts. Nina handled it like a pro. "He's trying to scare you into backing down," she said. It's classic. But what if the judge believes him? "He posted your private photos. We have screenshots. Metadata. IP traces. His own voice on the phone asking you to stop." I nodded, but my stomach was in knots. Because I knew how things like this could go. I'd seen cases where victims were dragged through legal hell, painted as vindictive liars, their credibility picked apart until even they started doubting themselves. "I want to testify," I said. Nina raised an eyebrow. "You don't have to. We can submit everything in writing." "No," I said firmly. "I want to look him in the eyes when I say it." And so I did. The courthouse wasn't what I expected, no grand halls, no drama. Just beige walls, buzzing lights, and the strange stillness of bureaucracy. But when I saw Greg sitting across the aisle, everything in me went cold. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, emotionally. Like someone trying to fit into a suit of armor that no longer belonged to him. I took the stand. I told my story. The texts. The photos. The betrayal. The aftermath. The nights I stayed up scrolling, afraid of what would show up next. The humiliation of seeing my own body shared by strangers. The fear. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just spoke. And for once, Greg didn't interrupt. He didn't smirk. He didn't even look up. When it was his turn, his lawyer spoke for him. He said Greg had made a mistake. That he was devastated by how things escalated. That he never meant to cause real harm. They said he had lost work. Lost friends. That he was the victim of a digital mob. But they couldn't refute the evidence. The judge didn't deliver a verdict that day, it would take weeks. But I walked out of that courtroom lighter. Like I had dragged a boulder to the top of a hill and finally let go. 2 days later, I got another message from Erin, Greg's ex. "Hey," she wrote. "I know this might be weird, but would you ever consider talking to someone in law enforcement?" I blinked. Reread it. She explained. One of her friends worked cybercrime at the state level. She had shared my story with them unofficially, and they were interested. Not just in Greg, but in a pattern. Turns out, Erin said, he's not the only one doing this. And some of these guys, they network. My blood ran cold. "You're saying this is, like, organized?" "Not in the mafia sense," she replied. "But yeah, there's forums. Groups. They share tactics. Targets. Even photos." And just like that, the scale of it shifted again. It wasn't about Greg anymore. It was about something bigger. I agreed to speak with a cybercrime investigator. Her name was Detective Renna. She wasn't what I expected, young, sharp, tired eyes. She didn't speak in legalese. She just listened. I told her everything. When I was done, she said, "What you've described, the photos, the threats, the coordinated harassment, it matches 3 other cases I'm working on. Different names, different men. But the same playbook." I felt sick. "And nothing's been done?" She gave me a look that said more than any words could. "We're building something," she said. "But it's slow. These guys hide well. The laws haven't caught up. But what you've done, going public, documenting it all, it's brave. And it helps." I gave her everything I had. Emails. Screenshots. My timeline. She thanked me. Promised to keep in touch. And then, silence again. The weeks crawled. The hearing faded into memory. The blog post was still being shared, but less. The messages slowed. And I waited for a verdict, for news, for something to say it was over. And then, finally, it came. I was walking out of the grocery store when my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. "Claire Vaughn," the voice asked. "Yes. This is Officer Renna. We just made an arrest." I stopped walking. "Greg?" I asked. "No. But someone tied to the same ring. And we're closing in on more." She couldn't give details, ongoing investigation. But she thanked me again. Said my testimony had helped solidify patterns. Said it mattered. And then, as if the universe had timed it, I got the email from Nina. Verdict, in our favor. Greg's counterclaim was thrown out. The judge ruled in my favor on all counts. He owed damages. Was legally prohibited from contacting me. And the smear website? Its domain was now frozen. It was over. But more than that, it was beginning. Because now I had something bigger than revenge. I had purpose. The podcast offered me a regular segment, stories from survivors, advice, updates on the law. I started writing again. Speaking. Teaching women how to protect themselves online. How to document. How to fight back. One night, after an event, a woman came up to me, maybe 22, nervous, wringing her hands. She said, "I thought I was crazy. Everyone told me I was overreacting. That I shouldn't have sent the photos in the first place." I looked her straight in the eyes. "You're not crazy. And you're not to blame." She cried. And I held her. That was the moment I realized Greg didn't break me. He revealed me. Not just to others. To myself, it's strange what survival looks like once the storm passes. Not triumph. Not celebration. Just breathing. I wasn't dancing in the street after the court victory. I wasn't popping champagne or grinning into mirrors. What I did was laundry, grocery shopping, vacuuming. I swept the corners of my apartment with the same tired diligence as before, only now with the knowledge that I had finally forced Greg into silence, legal, public, permanent silence. But trauma doesn't listen to verdicts. It lingers long after the fight is won. The next few weeks were quiet. My inbox, for the first time in months, stayed free of threats or anonymous accusations. I didn't check my email obsessively. I stopped looking behind me when walking home. I even logged into Instagram without that flutter of dread. It was almost disappointing how normal it all felt. Until the letter came. Not an email. An actual letter. Handwritten. No return address. It arrived tucked between bills and takeout menus. The handwriting on the front was neat, practiced. It simply said, Claire. No last name. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside, there was only a folded piece of notebook paper. On it, written in that same steady hand, was this. I lost everything. You could have just let me move on. But now you've made yourself a target. Not just for me. For everyone like me. I sat very still, the paper trembling in my hands. It wasn't signed. There was no postmark I could trace. Just those words, plain and chilling. I called Nina immediately. She was silent for a long time after I read it to her. Claire, she finally said, we need to bring this to the police. Again. I did. The officer at the station took the letter, bagged it, filed a report. Promised to investigate, but gently reminded me that without fingerprints, DNA, or a return address, it would be difficult to prove who sent it. But we both knew. It was Greg. He couldn't write me online anymore. Couldn't show up at my home. Couldn't email, text, or whisper through a proxy. So he picked up a pen. He wanted me to know that I hadn't killed his power. I had only scattered it. And others like him might still be watching. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I read forums, Reddit threads, advocacy blogs. I dove into the language of trauma recovery, online harassment, and the legal loopholes that let predators weaponize silence. I read about laws still catching up to reality, how digital abuse is still new, how law enforcement lacks training, how restraining orders are hard to enforce across platforms. And I made a decision. If the system wasn't built to protect people like me, I'd help change the system. The next morning, I reached out to a woman named Sheila, the founder of an anti-harassment nonprofit I'd done a podcast with a month prior. I asked her, bluntly, how do I help? She called me within the hour. What do you want to do? She asked. Anything. Speak. Write. Sit on panels. Organize fundraisers. Testify if I have to. She laughed gently. You're the real thing, Claire. Most survivors just want it to be over. You want to make it count. I want to make it matter, I corrected her. And so I did. Within 3 weeks, I was co-hosting an online summit on digital abuse. 2 months after that, I gave my first in-person talk to a college women's group. By the fall, I was traveling to conferences. I even consulted on a new bill being drafted to improve revenge porn prosecution. And Greg? He vanished. No new profiles. No sightings. No whispers from mutual acquaintances. He wasn't gone, of course. Just out of my reach now. Which was fine. I had bigger things to focus on. One day, I got an email from a young woman named Jordan, 19 years old, college freshman. She'd read my blog post and saw herself in every word. He sent the photos to his friends, she wrote. They laughed. I couldn't even go to class. I thought I'd have to transfer. I called her. We talked for 2 hours. She cried. I listened. Then I gave her my lawyer's number and told her exactly what to do, step by step. When we hung up, I realized I was shaking not from fear, but something else. A kind of fire. The kind you get when pain finally turns into fuel. I didn't just survive Greg. I outgrew him. One night, about a year after the original incident, I found myself on a rooftop bar in New York City. I was there for a conference, nothing fancy, just community organizers and cyberlaw geeks. The skyline glittered behind me, and I held a glass of wine I hadn't had to look over my shoulder to enjoy. A man approached. Not a creep, just someone trying to be kind. "I read your piece," he said. "The blog. My sister went through something similar." We talked for a bit. He wasn't trying to impress me or flirt. Just connect. That's when I realized I wasn't afraid of men anymore. Not like I had been. I was cautious. Careful. But not scared. Greg hadn't stolen that from me after all. And in the end, I think that's what really burned him. He tried to reduce me to a headline. A whisper. A rumor. A naked image stripped of context and identity. But I reclaimed all of it. Piece by piece. Painfully. Publicly. And now? I own every word. Every scar. Every story. Including this one. There's this strange, guilty peace that comes after you win. Like you're walking through the ruins of your old life, careful not to trip on the broken pieces still scattered across the floor. Everyone claps for the survivor, but no one warns you how lonely it feels once the adrenaline fades. People moved on from my story. I didn't. I couldn't. It lived in me. Not like a wound anymore, but like a ghost I'd made peace with. I didn't cry about Greg anymore. I didn't flinch at the word photo. But I still locked my doors twice. Still scanned every unknown number. Still hesitated before accepting new friend requests. Recovery wasn't linear. I spoke at a law school panel that fall. The topic was digital privacy and the law's failure to protect victims. The moderator, a sharp woman in her 50s, asked me, "What do you say to people who argue that sending private photos is irresponsible in the first place?" The question made the room go still. I didn't get angry. I smiled. "I say blaming the victim has always been the easiest way to avoid confronting the abuser," I answered. We don't ask burglary victims why they bought expensive things. We don't ask arson victims why they bought matches. But we do ask women why they trusted someone. We don't ask why he broke that trust. The room erupted in applause. Afterward, 3 students came up to me. One of them, a young woman named Elena, looked close to tears. "I'm so tired of being quiet," she whispered. "Then don't be," I said. "Not anymore." She hugged me. Tight. Like she was holding on for more than just herself. And in that moment, I realized maybe my story wasn't just a story. Maybe it was a door. And maybe other women, younger, scared, unheard, could walk through it into their own strength. But there were still landmines. The smear site, though gone, had been archived on some shady corners of the internet. Every so often, someone would DM me a screenshot. Or worse, send me a message like, "Is this really you? LOL. At first, I deleted and blocked. Eventually, I started replying. "Yes, that's me. And here's the story behind it." Then I'd drop the link to the blog post. The court summary. The podcast. I weaponized the truth. I made it sharper than any screenshot could be. But deep down, I knew something Greg said in that letter still haunted me. "You've made yourself a target. Not just for me. For everyone like me." And he wasn't wrong. At a conference in Atlanta, after I finished my keynote speech, a man approached me in the lobby. He wore a lanyard, carried a notepad. He looked like any other tech nerd, harmless. "You're Claire Vaughn?" he asked. "I am." He smiled politely. "I'm part of an online privacy think tank. We've been tracking organized harassment rings. Would you be willing to talk privately?" Something in his tone made me pause. But curiosity won. We sat down at a cafe near the venue. He pulled out his laptop and showed me a map of connections, usernames, forums, dark web threads. And in the middle? My name. "It's not just random trolls," he said. "There's a coordinated effort to discredit prominent women who speak out about digital abuse. You're on several of their watch lists." My stomach dropped. "Why me?" "Because you won. And because you didn't go away." He wasn't threatening me. In fact, he was offering help. His group had software that tracked patterns. He offered to flag anything involving my name, public or private. I gave him my contact info cautiously. Later that night, I lay in my hotel bed, phone in hand, staring at the ceiling. I had always known Greg wasn't unique. But knowing I was being monitored by men like him, collectively, obsessively, turned my skin cold. But I didn't back down. Instead, I posted a new blog. Title: They're Still Watching. And I'm Still Talking. I wrote about the map. The think tank. The fact that even now, with my name cleared and justice served, I was still being stalked in digital silence. And I ended with this: "You think you scare me? You should have tried before I walked through hell and came back carrying fire." The post went viral. Again. I got emails from journalists, from survivors, from lawmakers. I was invited to help consult on another bill, this one directly aimed at digital stalking and coordinated online harassment. I accepted. And somewhere in that chaos, I began to feel something I hadn't in months. Hope. Not for revenge. For change. But it came with a cost. One night, after a particularly long week, I met my sister Olivia for dinner. She was the one who'd taken me in during the worst of it. The one who held my hand in court. The one who reminded me who I was when I forgot. We sat across from each other in a quiet little Italian place. She ordered wine. I didn't. She looked at me for a long moment, then said, "Do you ever think about stopping?" Stopping what? All of it. The speaking. The posting. The spotlight. I blinked. "Why would I?" She sighed. "Because I worry. You've made a name for yourself now, but it's a name some really sick people know. You're always looking over your shoulder." I looked down at my hands. "I can't unknow what I know," I said. "I can't unlive it. And I won't pretend it didn't happen just to feel safe again." She reached across the table, squeezed my hand. "I know. But I still miss the old you sometimes." I didn't answer. Because I missed her too. And I knew she was gone. Not dead. Not erased. Just transformed. Claire before Greg had been hopeful, trusting, even a little naive. She'd believed in private conversations and good intentions. In love. In loyalty. Claire after Greg? She was sharper. More guarded. Less impressed by charm. But she was also louder. Braver. And dangerous in all the ways that made men like him uncomfortable. I wasn't the same. And that was okay. That night, I went home and found a package on my doorstep. No label. Just a small black box. I opened it carefully, hands trembling. Inside, a flash drive. No note. No markings. I didn't plug it in. Instead, I called Detective Renna. She came over within an hour. Took the drive, gloves and all. Promised to run it through the department's forensic lab. She called me 3 days later. "It's clean," she said. "No malware. Just images." Of me? Yes. But nothing new. All from that original dump. My stomach turned. "Why send it now?" "We think it was a warning," she said. A reminder. Not from Greg, probably from someone else in the ring. I swallowed. "Do I need to be worried?" There was a pause. "I think you need to be ready," she said. "But Claire, you already are." She was right. I was ready. For whatever came next. People think the hardest part is the fight. The courtroom. The confrontation. The phone call where you finally say, "This ends now." But that's only half the war. The real challenge is what happens after. After the blogs fade. After the camera crews leave. After your friends stop checking in every day. That's when you meet yourself, the you that's left behind. In my case, that person was tired. Not physically, but emotionally. Like someone who had run through fire and now sat on the edge of a crater, wondering what else could possibly burn. But something strange happened during that quiet stretch. I started to live again. Not just survive, live. I went on a weekend trip with Olivia. We didn't talk about courtrooms or trauma or cyber laws. We talked about food and dumb rom-coms and the kind of earrings we used to wear in college. I bought a bike. I painted my bedroom a bold, ridiculous shade of yellow. I even joined a local book club. The kind of things that once felt distant, normal people, activities, started to feel reachable again. But peace is never permanent when your name's been dragged through the internet. One afternoon, my inbox dinged with an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line was simple. "Thought you might want this." Attached was a zip folder. I didn't open it. I forwarded it to the task force Detective Renna had connected me with months ago. They ran it through their security protocols and confirmed what I already suspected. It was more images. Some altered, some not. All re-uploads from the original breach. They traced the IP. It led to a man named Rory Matheson, someone I'd never met. He lived 3 states away, ran a data privacy YouTube channel, and had over 80,000 subscribers. They pulled screenshots of his Discord messages, bragging about leaking Vaughn's vault again, calling me the revenge porn queen turned feminist liar. But this time, something shifted. Because when the detective issued a warrant and news broke about his arrest, the media didn't hesitate. They believed me. Immediately. No, allegedly. No, both sides. No passive headlines. Just digital harasser arrested after targeting activist Claire Vaughn. The world was finally catching up. But that wasn't the end of it. Because the next message didn't come in the form of hate. It came in the form of an invitation. A woman named Maya reached out, a documentary producer. She'd seen me speak at a summit, read my blog, followed the court filings. "We're doing a docuseries on digital harassment survivors," she wrote. "We want to tell your story, truthfully, fully, and on your terms." I didn't say yes right away. Part of me still flinched at cameras. But part of me also knew, if someone else had told their story when I needed it most, maybe I wouldn't have felt so alone in that first awful week. So I met with Maya. We talked for hours. She didn't push. She didn't glamorize. She just listened. And when I finally said yes, I didn't feel dread. I felt ready. We filmed over the course of 3 months, interviews, reenactments, even footage from the courthouse steps. They talked to Olivia, to Nina, to Detective Renna, to other survivors. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't polished. But it was real. And when it premiered on a major streaming platform that fall, something inside me cracked open. Because this time, it wasn't just my story. It was dozens. And viewers didn't see a scandal. They saw a system. Broken. Biased. Brutal. And they saw women flawed, furious, brave, refusing to be silenced. The response was overwhelming. I got letters from other countries. Emails from teenagers. DMs from middle-aged moms. Women of all ages, backgrounds, and lives, writing the same thing in different words. I thought I was the only one. And it hit me, that was the most dangerous thing Greg and men like him had ever done. Not the photos. Not the threats. The isolation. The whisper that says, "You're alone." But I wasn't anymore. And neither were they. Still, I'd be lying if I said there weren't moments of doubt. Late one night, I was reviewing clips from the documentary when I saw a particular shot, me, sitting in my apartment, staring blankly at the computer screen. The expression on my face wasn't strong or fiery. It was hollow. For a second, I hated seeing that version of me. The girl who didn't know what was coming. Who thought she was loved. Who thought trust was a currency that always came back in full. But then I remembered, she survived. She didn't stay broken. She fought back, even when her voice shook, even when her hands trembled pressing send on that first blog post. And that girl? She deserved to be seen too. Because victims don't start off brave. They become brave when the world gives them no other choice. After the docuseries dropped, I was offered a book deal. Not a memoir, I wasn't ready for that. But a guide. A manifesto. Something like, Digital Armor, How to Reclaim Your Power After Online Abuse. I said yes. And as I outlined the chapters from document everything to the first phone call you make to what to say when they blame you, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in years. Control. This wasn't Greg's story anymore. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about reclamation. That fall, I sat in a coffee shop with my laptop, watching a girl nearby scroll through her phone. She looked worried. Anxious. She glanced at me a few times, like she recognized me. Finally, she got up. "Are you Claire Vaughn?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "I just wanted to say thank you." I waited for her to sit. She didn't. "I'm pressing charges," she said. "Against my ex." I wouldn't have even known where to start if it weren't for you. I didn't say much. I just reached out and squeezed her hand. When she left, I turned back to my laptop and wrote the dedication page for my book. To the girls who thought it was their fault. To the women who didn't stay silent. And to the ones who still think they're broken. You're not. You're just beginning. I always knew there'd be an aftershock. You don't survive a war like this without some part of it clinging to your skin, hiding under your nails, waiting for the next tremor. The docuseries brought global attention. My inbox flooded, my name trended, my story was dissected by strangers and academics alike. Some praised me. Some pitied me. A few still called me a liar. But I had armor now. Words. Evidence. A network of survivors who no longer flinched at the word exposure. Still, nothing prepared me for the knock on my door. It was a Tuesday. Why is it always a Tuesday? And I was in my kitchen heating up leftovers. A normal day. Or at least, as close to normal as my life had become. Then, 3 slow knocks. Not the aggressive thudding of law enforcement, not the friendly rhythm of a neighbor. Just deliberate. I checked the peephole. A woman. Mid-30s. Tall. Dark hair pulled back into a sleek ponytail. Dressed casually, jeans, gray sweater, no visible badge or ID. I cracked the door, kept the chain on. Yes! She smiled gently. Claire Vaughn. I tensed. Depends who's asking. I'm Agent Rowan Beckwith. FBI. My first instinct was to slam the door. Instead, I stared. She pulled a slim leather folder from her bag and held it up. ID, badge. Real. May I come in? She asked. I hesitated, then unlatched the chain and let her step inside. She didn't sit. Just scanned the room with quick, clinical eyes and then turned back to me. I'll keep this brief. We've been monitoring several online forums tied to harassment campaigns. Coordinated networks. Some involving image-based abuse, doxing, and targeted harassment against women, especially high-profile survivors. And you're here. Why? I asked. Her gaze sharpened. Because your name keeps coming up. Not just as a target. As a trigger. I swallowed. A trigger for what? To escalate. To plan. To retaliate. She handed me a small folder, unmarked. Inside were screenshots. Forum threads. Snippets of conversations between faceless users with usernames like Ghost Tagger and IronPulse87. And my name. Dozens of times. Is this Greg's doing? I asked. She shook her head. Greg was the match. But what you lit, it's a fire burning across their whole system. I sat down. The screenshots weren't just angry rants. They were plans. Talks of hiring private investigators. Spreading deepfakes. Even discussions about approaching speaking events as fans to gather intel. One post read, "She thinks she's untouchable now. Someone should remind her that no one is." Rowan watched my face carefully. We've seen this happen before. When one survivor gets traction, it threatens the whole structure. They don't just want to silence you. They want to make an example out of you. I closed the folder slowly. My hands were sweating. So, what do you want me to do? She took a breath. Work with us. I stared. I'm not law enforcement. No, but you're visible. You're connected. People trust you. You've already been doing the work, educating, documenting, advocating. We need someone who understands what it feels like from the inside. You want me to be bait? She shook her head. We want you to help us see the parts we miss. To understand the psychology. To map the patterns. Not undercover, not like that. But as a consultant. Discreet. Unofficial at first. I looked away. The windows were starting to darken. Outside, life continued like nothing had changed. But something had. I thought I'd already fought the war. Turns out, that was just the prelude. What happens if I say no? I asked. We keep doing what we're doing, she said. But we move slower. With more guesswork. And you stay exposed. That wasn't a threat. It was the truth. I looked back at the folder. The screenshots. My name, sliced up and passed around like a wanted poster. I stood up. I'll do it. But on one condition. Name it. I get to keep telling my story. In my words. Always. Rowan nodded. Then let's begin. The first few weeks were slow. I wasn't given access to classified databases or secret meetings. Instead, I sat with forensic analysts and combed through threads, not just about me, but about others. women in tech, activists, journalists, even therapists who had spoken out against toxic masculinity. The threads all followed the same pattern: objectify, discredit, isolate, and, if that failed, destroy. What I hadn't realized until then was how organized it all was. These weren't just rogue trolls. This was a system. A digital boys' club weaponized by anonymity and ego. I learned new terms: swatting, sock puppeting, bridge burning, a term they used for ruining someone's online presence so thoroughly they'd have to start over under a new name. They didn't just hate women. They hated accountability. One day, I came across a thread titled, Operation Chokesilk. I clicked. It was a plan, a real one. To target 5 women known for speaking on revenge porn and privacy law. Coordinated harassment campaigns. Targeted smear sites. Fake allegations submitted anonymously to their employers. My name wasn't on that list. But I recognized all 5. 2 of them I'd spoken to personally. I printed the thread and brought it to Rowan the next morning. We need to warn them. She nodded. We already have. Then she looked me in the eye. But Claire, you weren't on the list this time because you're not a target. I frowned. What do you mean? She hesitated. They think you're one of us. I blinked. Because of the documentary. Because of the silence. Because you disappeared for a while after the verdict. They've built this conspiracy theory that you're part of some feminist counterintelligence effort. I couldn't help it, I laughed. A bitter, exhausted laugh. They think I'm a spy. They think you're a symbol. And they fear what symbols can do. It wasn't long before I was pulled into the next case. A woman named Camila. Tech entrepreneur. Latina. Openly bisexual. She had founded a data privacy startup with a mission statement that read, "Protecting your data shouldn't cost you your dignity." She'd gone public about being doxxed. A week later, her home was broken into. Nothing stolen. Just ransacked. And in the middle of her living room, a printed-out image of her own leaked photo, folded into the shape of a paper airplane. Rowan brought me in to talk to her. Camila was strong. Blazing. The kind of woman who didn't back down from a challenge until someone came too close. They don't want to end my career, she told me. They want to make me invisible. I understood. So I shared my story. Not just the blog post version, the real one. The nights I spent scrubbing comments off my LinkedIn. The trembling in my fingers every time I turned on my phone. The way I kept a bat by my bed even now. She didn't cry. She just nodded. Then she said, "Let's flip the script." What do you mean? I'm tired of playing defense. Let's make them the ones looking over their shoulders. The next step wasn't legal. It was digital. Rowan's team introduced us to a cybersecurity unit that specialized in ethical counter-surveillance. Ex-hackers, reformed black hats, and analysts with burner laptops and a terrifying understanding of online ecosystems. They started mapping. Not just usernames, connections. They tracked overlaps in posting times, shared IP pings, reused phrases, typographical fingerprints. And slowly, a web began to emerge. One node at the center kept pinging in unusual patterns. The username, nomad_prey. It didn't match Greg, or Rory, or any of the names we knew. But it had been in every major thread, not posting threats, but encouraging others. Feeding them. Rowan circled it. This is the one. Who is he? We don't know yet, she said. But we will. Courtrooms. Headlines. The sound of a gavel or a guilty verdict read aloud, echoing in a room full of hushed tension. But real justice, the kind that sticks, it's quieter. Slower. Less cinematic and more surgical. It's the sound of a hard drive spinning in a lab. The clack of a forensic keyboard. The inhale before someone says, "We found him." It took 5 more weeks before that sound arrived. I was in a tiny conference room inside a federal building that still smelled like stale coffee and bureaucracy. Rowan stood across from me, a whiteboard filled with digital breadcrumbs behind her. Nomad_prey, she said. His real name is Tyler Mays. I blinked. Do I know him? No, she said. He's never interacted with you directly. Never emailed you. Never showed up at your events. But he was the architect behind nearly every harassment thread tied to your name. I leaned forward. Then why? Because it was never personal. Not to him. It was ideological. He runs a subnetwork, invite only, where they coordinate targets, trade images, and craft narratives. Craft narratives? I asked. Rowan nodded. Smear campaigns. Strategic leaks. It's less about destroying reputations now and more about manipulating reality. They rewrite your story before you even get the chance to tell it. A chill ran down my spine. They call it narrative engineering, she said. And it's growing. I stared at the image on her screen, a grainy photo of a man who could have been anyone. Mid-30s. Clean-shaven. Polo shirt. The kind of face you wouldn't remember at the grocery store. That's him. I asked. That's the man who weaponized your trauma to rally others like him. He turned your fight into his war. What happens now? We arrest him, she said. And we make sure the world knows what he really is. The raid happened quietly. I wasn't there, I wasn't allowed to be. But Rowan called me the moment it was done. He had 4 phones, she said. 3 encrypted. 1 open. Guess which one he used for his burner accounts. Tell me you found photos. We found everything. His devices were a vault, not just of stolen images, but of plans. Chats. Forum admin logs. Deepfake generators. Scripts for emails he never sent. Dossiers on dozens of women. Even video clips from conferences, including mine, annotated with notes like, high-value narrative target. Too loud to ignore. That was the moment it hit me. I hadn't been harassed by accident. I'd been selected. The trial didn't happen right away. Digital crime moves slowly, and red tape is thick. But Tyler May's name was finally public. And when it hit the news, it hit hard. Former privacy advocate, arrested for orchestrating online harassment ring. Mastermind behind viral revenge porn campaigns unmasked. FBI links digital smear network to known public harassment cases. And for the first time, the headlines weren't about me. They were about them. I testified in his pretrial hearing. It wasn't required, but I insisted. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. He sat across from me, expression blank. No rage. No smirk. Just nothing. Like the man behind Nomad_Prey didn't exist in this room. But when I took the stand, I didn't look at him. I looked at the judge. And I spoke. About what it feels like to become a symbol against your will. About waking up every day wondering if you'll be dragged back into the spotlight, not for who you are, but for what they think you represent. I told the court what Tyler did wasn't trolling. It was terrorism. Digital, yes, but no less invasive. He didn't just try to ruin lives, I said. He tried to rewrite them. To replace reality with his own version. One where we're the villains for surviving. When I stepped down, he finally looked at me. Just for a second. And for the first time, I saw fear. He was denied bail. That night, I walked home alone. No protection detail. No cameras. Just me and the cold evening air and the faint sound of my own breath echoing in the quiet streets. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt unfinished. Because if Tyler was the architect, Greg had been the blueprint. And I still hadn't decided what to do about that. The book came out 6 months later. Digital Armor, Reclaiming Power in an Unprotected World. It wasn't a bestseller. But it didn't need to be. It found the right people, college counselors, community centers, women's organizations, even high schools. I started getting invitations to speak again. But this time, the questions were different. They didn't ask, how did it happen? They asked, how do we stop it from happening again? That was the shift. I wasn't just a survivor anymore. I was an architect of a different kind. One building something stronger. Then, one night, I got a text. Unknown number. Just one word. Coffee? I stared at it for a long time before replying. Who is this? The response came quickly. Aaron. Greg's ex. The first one. I replied. Where? We met at a bookstore cafe in the village. She wore a leather jacket and no makeup. Still had that wounded but fierce energy I remembered from our one phone call nearly 2 years ago. I heard about Maze, she said. I nodded. Big win. She sipped her coffee. Greg's spiraling. I stiffened. He lost another job, she said. The lawsuit made employers nervous. He's gone full martyr now, says he's a victim of cancel culture. Of feminist extremism. I scoffed. Of course he did. But here's the thing, she added. He's trying to start a foundation. I blinked. A what? A men's integrity coalition. Supposedly to support men who've been falsely accused. He's already got a podcast and a few investors lined up. I nearly dropped my cup. He's trying to profit off this? Claire, she said slowly. He's trying to erase what he did. Rebrand himself. Control the narrative. I sat in stunned silence. All this time, I thought silence had ended him. But he was still evolving. Still dangerous. Still storytelling. I didn't decide right away. For 3 days, I didn't sleep. I paced. I journaled. I played out every scenario in my head, public statements, legal options, media strategies. My instinct was to go nuclear. But I'd done that before. This time, I wanted precision. So I called Maya, the documentary producer. Are the cameras still rolling? I asked. The second documentary was shorter. A follow-up. Tighter. Sharper. But more importantly, it told his story, not in defense, but in exposure. We presented Greg's podcast, his site, his pitch deck to investors. Then we overlaid it with court records, my testimony, police reports, digital timelines. No spin. No drama. Just receipts. I called the episode The Rebrand, How Abusers Rewrite History. It premiered at a tech ethics symposium. And within a week, Greg's coalition lost all 3 of its known investors. His podcast account was flagged for disinformation. And a Reddit thread titled The Truth About Greg Marsden hit 10,000 upvotes in 2 days. He tried to respond, of course. Posted a 3-minute video claiming he was being targeted by a vindictive woman who couldn't move on. It was removed for violating platform policy within 12 hours. I didn't smile. Not exactly. But I felt a click. The kind of quiet satisfaction that doesn't need applause. Just acknowledgement. A year passed. Then another. Tyler Mays pled guilty to federal charges, including cyberstalking, conspiracy, and distribution of illicit images. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Greg? He disappeared from public view. No new podcasts. No interviews. No fake coalitions. Just the occasional unconfirmed sighting at discount gyms and low-tier corporate training gigs. My book went into its 2nd edition. I added a chapter called Survivor, Architect, Warrior. And at the very end, I wrote this. There are 2 kinds of people in the aftermath of abuse. Those who rebuild quietly. And those who build something louder. I was both. And I am still not done. Now, I run an organization of my own. Siren. Survivors in Resistance, Education, and Network Building. We train women in digital safety. We educate law enforcement. We push for stronger legislation. We offer grants to survivors who need legal aid, therapy, or just the courage to start again. At our first annual retreat, I stood on a stage facing 60 women, coders, teachers, students, mothers. Every one of them had once been reduced to a screenshot. A threat. A file on someone else's hard drive. And now they stood taller. Brighter. They weren't just reclaiming their stories. They were building new ones. One of them, a girl named Talia, asked me during Q&A, "Do you think we'll ever fully win?" I paused. Then I said, "Victory isn't one moment. It's every woman who doesn't have to go through what we did. It's every system that listens. Every law that changes. Every silence we shatter before it starts." She smiled, then stood, and clapped. One by one, the rest followed. Not for me. For themselves. Because we weren't just survivors anymore. We were architects of the next world.